Yeah, I think lobbying would do a good option as well. We were down in DC on the weekend. We went talked with Senator Gillibrand's office. They expressed a lot of interest in trying to engage with the hacker community. They want to build a hacking school. They want to have more high-level computer hackers working for the federal government. They're asking us where they all are, and we're telling them they're all sitting in federal prisons. You arrested them. There's such a disconnect between the reality and what they want it to the reality to be as well.
This week on Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero and Bitcoin safely on iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys. And by StealthEX, an instant exchange where privacy is the top concern. Go to stealthex.io to instantly exchange between Monero and 450 plus assets without having to create an account or register, and with no limits, making StealthEX a simple way to purchase Monero with crypto anonymously. Monero Talk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you. And supporting us is easier than ever. By typing in monerotalk.crypto in your monero.com or Cake Wallet send address field to send us a tip. This week on Monero Talk. Douglas Tuman interviews Tor Ekeland and Michael Hassard, attorneys with decades of experience working on federal computer crime cases. They discuss the ongoing case of Roman Sterlingov, an early Bitcoin investor accused of creating and operating the darknet Bitcoin mixing service, Bitcoin Fog, and laundering $336 million. They talk about regulatory outreach in crypto, why there is no evidence against Roman, how Chainalysis is incentivized to ramp up crypto investigations and prosecutions, the implications of the case for every user of privacy-preserving technologies, whether or not Roman should have used XMR, is it possible to ban Monero, and much more. Monero Talk starts now.
All right. Tor, Michael, welcome to Monero Talk.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining me, guys. So big topic today. I gotta admit, I didn't really know much about this until you guys reached out. Do you guys want to quickly maybe introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into the topic at hand?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tor Ekeland, and I've been doing computer crime cases in federal court for about the last decade. And Mike, who can introduce himself as an associate at the firm, but basically we're here to talk today about a particular case we're working on that we consider to be a very important case in relation to blockchain forensics, and also to anybody in the crypto community, given its breadth. With that, I turn it over to Mike.
Hey, my name is Mike Hassard. I'm an associate with the firm, federal trial attorney, and this is a big case, precedent-setting case in the blockchain space. And thanks for having us on board to talk about this.
Yeah, for sure. This is Monero Talk, obviously, so we're constantly talking about chain analytics and the implications it has for cryptocurrency at large, and then in particular with Monero, given that Monero, as far as we know, cannot be tracked or traced. But we can get into that. I'd like to get your opinions on that and those type of things at some point. But if you guys can, I guess first give us an overall of the case. What's actually going on here? What is the case at hand?
Well, basically, in a nutshell, our client stands accused of running a Bitcoin tumbler called Bitcoin Fog for 10 years and laundering $336 million worth of drug money crypto, except there's not a single piece of evidence that he operated Bitcoin Fog. And after a 10-year, very lengthy, very expensive investigation involving Chainalysis, and sort of actually, I think one of Chainalysis's first cases, they arrest him at LAX when he's going to the United States to take some flight courses. And when they arrest him at LAX, they arrest him with 3 laptops, 4 Raspberry Pis, 4 terabytes worth of hard drives, handwritten notes, diaries, backup codes to all his accounts, and not a shred of evidence that this guy's been operating Bitcoin Fog for 10 years. And he's been in jail for the last 2 years awaiting pre-trial. And we still haven't seen a shred of evidence that he's guilty at all of anything. And what is going on here is they've confused this guy who was an early adopter of crypto in like 2011 for this like Russian money laundering drug kingpin. But with that, I hand it over to Mike if he's got anything more on that.
Yeah, this case came through a friend of mine. I'm actually friends with his cousin, and that's how we heard about the case. And at first we thought we were going to go in there and cut a deal, but it quickly became apparent that he's completely innocent of everything for which he's accused. He's been caught up in this Kafka's nightmare, and it's just been, he's locked up in the Northern Neck Regional Jail in Virginia. They didn't give him bail. He's been, they're throwing the book at him here, and they're throwing the book at him with some very shoddy and incomplete blockchain analysis. There appears to be a lot of parallel construction where they had a target in mind, and then they built the investigation to support that interpretation rather than conducting an investigation to try to figure out who actually operated Bitcoin Fog. And that's where we step in.
And so what do they quote unquote have on him, for lack of a better thing? Like what are they, what if they do have any good evidence to point to, what is it that they're claiming as
that's what astounds me about this case. They are claiming that in 2011, now mind you, the statute of limitations and all these federal statutes are 5 years, and we're talking about stuff like 12 years ago. In 2011, he allegedly paid for the DNS registration for the ClearNet, regular internet, www.bitcoinfog.com website, but no evidence or allegation that he ever set it up, just that he paid for the DNS registration. And they don't ever talk about the renewal of the DNS registration based on that, and that he was a user of Bitcoin Fog because he used it to tumble his currency and put it in like his Kraken account or whatever, just like the government's own expert says that 90% of the usage of tumblers is for legitimate purposes. Just based on that alleged DNS registration that they're doing from an IP address attribution, which we think is a misattribution, but it doesn't matter because it's illegal to register freaking DNS, right? They say he operated Bitcoin Fog as a administrator for 10 years. And mind you, they don't have the Bitcoin Fog servers. They don't have any logs. There's no eyewitnesses that say this. There's nothing in any of his computers that they seized that say this. They put him under surveillance when he was in the United States in Miami for like a couple weeks. They had him under physical surveillance. They had him under wiretap, and they had what's called a pen trap. And for people who don't know what a pen trap is they're trapping all your signal traffic and nothing, right? But you, one of the weird twists in this case, and I'm rambling a little bit, but this I think goes to the confirmation bias that's happening in this case, because it's people just sitting at desks 6,000 miles away from Sweden where a client lives. It has nothing to do with the United States. He's never been in DC, which is another whole other crazy thing about this case. They're kind of claiming universal jurisdiction. We can go and launch a prosecution from anywhere. We've got our laptop. I'll stop for a second right there. Mike, do you have anything you want to add on that? Because I won't shut up about this case. It pisses me off.
It pisses me off too.
Oh, Mike, you're breaking up a little bit. You guys there?
Yeah, I'm there. That's just me, like, keeping my mouth shut for a moment and keeping myself from running. Lawyers love to talk, right? Like, it's a fascinating case, and I think it's the first one ever to challenge these kinds of blockchain forensics, which are not as scientific as they're being claimed.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get into that. So I just want to understand better. So he's accused. Basically, they think they got on him that he's the one that registered the domain. I guess it's Bitcoin.
I'm back.
Bitcoin. .info. Is that it? Because I think I'm looking at it.
It was the original was in 2009 was bitcoinfog.com.
Okay.
And now there's an info one. It's still operating. That's
crazy. Why is that still up?
They said after they arrested him that the site shut down like 2 days or whatever, a couple days after he was arrested. But yeah, you can find it out there. There's a lot of stuff like that in this investigation that.
So yeah, like who's currently running the ClearNet site for that? Like then that's
right.
That's just strange. But I guess what was a little weird though, but he said he didn't remember whether or not he registered the domain. So what's kind of his argument there? It's just I register domains all the time type of thing, or that he
well, first of all, he did do that as part of his job, like because he was working for a Swedish internet marketing company, and he's also I know not tons of people, but a lot of people register domains and they don't administer the website, right? Like it'd be one thing if they had him registering this domain, right? And then some kind of evidence, like anything, a communication with the staff, logs, an eyewitness who overheard him in a bar, like every other crypto prosecution, they have corroborating evidence because this forensic software, even at its best, is just a tracing software. It's not an identification software. But I feel like people are so like afraid of showing that they don't understand what's going on in the tracing, and they're so afraid of looking stupid that they give credence to something that actually isn't that accurate. Is like a very probabilistic guessing heuristic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And when we say the tracing in terms of the website, it's that they traced the coins and saw that coins were used to register this to purchase the registration of this domain.
Yeah, and in this really convoluted, like crazy layered transaction that we have on our end, having problems like unpeeling and making sense with, and that there's errors in some of the pleadings as to wallet addresses, which you get like a typo in this kind of case, and the wallet address and everything's like all over the place. Essentially like a 3-layer transaction where they say our client was trying to hide the payment for it. But okay, well, even if he was, even just assuming arguendo that he did all that, first of all, it's completely legal.
Right.
It's in Sweden. Has nothing to do with the United States, right? Yeah, he bought a domain, right? You need more. You need more to get to money laundering, and you need to and you need to more to get to operating the site. And like Mike said at the beginning of this, at first we thought, oh yeah, we're going to cut a deal. I didn't think this case was like what it has become, and so I wasn't paying attention. And I finally go down and talk to him in jail, and we talked to the guy for like 3 minutes. You're like, oh my God, you're innocent. And he's like, yeah. And then you're like, shit, this is a different game because you can't cut a plea then, right? Because I know people lie to take pleas because this machine that they're up against is $42 billion budget. You need like a couple mil just to even get in the ballpark with these guys. But that's everyone who comes on this case, we say to them, if you see anything that makes you think he's guilty, like tell us right away. And nobody to date has come and said that. They've all said this is insane.
Right. And the thing is, even if he did register this domain and use Bitcoin to do it, it's just the ClearNet domain that talks about this service, which could have been anybody that was using the service, and maybe they just wanted to tell the world about the service. It doesn't mean that they were running the service. Right. Like
right. I
could have been Joe Bitcoin user. I used Bitcoin Fog because I wanted to add privacy to my transactions. And at the time, there really was no way to do that. And then I went and wrote about it, bought a domain, bitcoin.fog, on the ClearNet, just to put the word out to people on, if you're into Bitcoin and you want privacy, you can use this website and explain. You could use this Tor website, and here's how.
Here's a link. And here's a link.
Right.
But right, and completely legal and protected by First Amendment and all sorts of things. But he didn't do that, right? But like you say, even if he did, that's what's crazy about this case. Even if he did, just assuming all this stuff they're saying arguendo, okay, it's like they haven't identified a single specific crime. Now, mind you, he's being charged with money laundering, which requires that you're trying to hide, illicit proceeds. So you have to relate the money to some kind of crime, and we're asking over and over again, every step here, can you please identify a single bleeping crime? And to date, they haven't identified it. What they say is, oh, Bitcoin fog, Bitcoin fog, Bitcoin fog. But running a tumbler per se is not illegal, because you don't have you need to have like the illicit funds, the criminal intent to do this. And they're espousing this theory of criminal liability that everybody in the crypto space should be concerned with, because it's super expansive and it's just almost universal. They're claiming almost universal jurisdiction, so that they could sit at their desk anywhere in the United States or in DC and press a button and haul you into that court in DC. And you may not think that's a big deal, but venue is a big deal. It's costing us thousands of dollars out of money we don't have, because they seized all his money just to travel to see him in jail. Like, it's a 6-hour drive one way from New York. The jail's 2 hours outside of DC. And, they do things to, like, I mean, this guy's supposed to be innocent, right? Presumed innocent, but he hasn't had his trial. He's in jail. If he goes to a hearing, he's not going to get any sleep the night before the hearing. But anyhow,
give us some insight, into the legalities of it with regards to running a tumbler, right? So is it, it's not necessarily illegal to set up a system like this in the first place, but then I guess the idea is if they could show that a lot of illegal funds are going through it, then it becomes something that they can say is illegal because they're providing this service. Is that how
right? So
that's correct.
Yeah, it's traditional money laundering, and the money laundering statute hasn't changed, and you have to know that you're you're intentionally hiding criminal proceeds, right? And that requires that you know that what you've got are criminal proceeds. The problem they have here with our client is that these aren't criminal proceeds. These are the proceeds of his fucking paycheck, right? The money that he earned, that he got into crypto early in 2011, January 1st, 2011, you could buy one Bitcoin for 30 cents. That's the year he gets in, right? And then he hears some, he's hanging out in the scene, he's a computer nerd, right? Like a lot of us, but the government doesn't seem to understand that culture, right? And, somebody says to him, you should secure your stuff with the, tumble it. So everything he puts in his Kraken account, you can see in the discovery, he tumbles through Bitcoin fog. So it goes from like whatever his paycheck, wherever his bank is, into the tumbler, into Kraken, which is in his own name, his own passports and everything.
They follow KYC. He has his IDs on there and everything. He wasn't trying to hide anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, they can't trace anything, or they haven't bothered, right, to trace the origins of the fund. They're all like, because it's coming from Bitcoin fog, it's criminal proceeds, but that's not right?
Right.
Like,
He could have just been a user of Bitcoin fog, which is obviously what he's claiming he is. And he wanted to add privacy to his Bitcoin. He wanted to essentially clear the history of his Bitcoin. And there is no, right? Is it fair? There's no crime in trying to obfuscate the history of your Bitcoin, unless it's that you're obfuscating it because you committed some crime that you're trying to.
Correct.
Yeah, or hiding it for someone else that it's criminal.
The act of quote unquote washing your Bitcoin, for lack of a better term, is not per se illegal. It's if you're laundering for.
And they know that.
Right.
The government's own expert, Chainalysis, came out with a report a couple of years ago where they determined that about 90% of all transactions going through all the mixers, there's more than just Bitcoin fog. There was Helix, there's a couple other ones. So 90% are for legitimate reasons, people who want to secure the privacy of their cryptocurrency. It's the other 10% that are washing stolen funds from exchanges, washing drug money. That's the illegal part. That needs to be driven home. The government the Chainalysis understands that, but they still are bringing this prosecution.
So let's get to that. I mean, so the real crux of the issue, obviously you guys are trying to keep this innocent guy out of jail, right?
I'm trying to get him out. He's like, they got him in pre-trial.
Oh, okay, in pre-trial. Yeah. The trial when is the trial? It's soon, right? It's coming up.
September 9th.
Coming up September 9th. But perhaps what's most interesting, and not to belittle this guy. I mean, I mean, if he's innocent, this is tragic, right? what's really interesting is that potentially there's kind of something nefarious going on here with the ecosystem of chain analysis in and of itself, in that it's kind of perpetuating this, right? There's this incentive for the government to say we got the guy using chain analysis, and there's the incentive for chain analysis to say please use our chain analytics services to fight crime, and it's kind of creating this feedback loop that's perpetuating the perhaps the tracking down of innocent people using chain analytics, because it's quote unquote so easy to do, right? It seems like it's very straightforward, but you're claiming it hasn't been tested yet. We don't really even know how accurate it is, and here we have courts of law in the United States basically ready to rely on it and put somebody in jail for it.
Yeah, I think fundamentally it's not a deductive heuristic. It's not a like sort of piece of analytic software that comes up with like some sort of necessary indubitable proposition, like whatever the velocity of an object falling when it's being pulled by gravity or whatever. You have to guess when you're making these cluster attributions and all these sorts of quirky proprietary things involving algorithms and code that they're refusing to show us, right? Like, if your stuff's so great, how come you won't let us look at it, right? If you're so solid on your results, show us the damn math. And they're accusing us of hiding stuff, right? All they're doing is hiding everything. But I think no one's saying that blockchain forensics are useless, right? But they've gained this kind of authority from these prosecutions that are all basically pleas, and where there's all the cases that we've looked at have some sort of corroborating evidence. Like there's one in DC called Harmon, where the guy accidentally took a photo of the admin screen on his laptop with his Google glasses, and the government got that. Ross Ulbricht, Silk Road, gets arrested in the Glendale Public Library with his laptop open, admin panel to Silk Road open, chatting with an undercover agent, right? And then they get his diaries, and he's written in them all about this. In this case, they got our client's diaries. You know what they say about operating Bitcoin fog? Nothing. And in all those other cases, they got the servers. This case, they don't have the servers. They don't have any logs. They're accusing him of conspiracy, and there's not a single communication with anyone about operating Bitcoin fog. This guy's facing 50 to life. They spent millions of dollars on this investigation. They had him under surveillance in Florida, found nothing. They seized him with all his computers, not a trace. Like, I've never had a client in my decade of doing computer log that was so fucking disciplined that they didn't leave some little crumb somewhere on their shit that somebody can find. But I feel like I'm spitting or pissing in the wind talking with people, because there's so little, there's zero corroborating evidence that website DNS registration gets all this primacy. Everyone's like, oh my God, a later transaction in 2011. He must have operated something for 10 years. Give him 50 to fucking life. What are you guys doing? But darknet. That's all I have to say. That's where the boogeyman lives. That's where all your fears live. That's where all the witches are. The darknet, where the hooded hackers are. Sorry, ranting.
Don't worry, there's a lot of ranting on this channel. Mike, you want to throw anything in there?
Yeah, for sure. There's also appears to be a profit motive between Chainalysis and the government.
That's what I was trying to get at. Go ahead. Yeah,
there's been a couple of prosecutors in this case. One of them went off and became a judge who's been making favorable decisions in favor of Chainalysis. There's another one that now works as a senior legal director at Chainalysis. And it appears that every time Chainalysis gets mentioned in a DOJ press release, trumpeting an arrest of a darknet cyber criminal, Chainalysis will get thanked in the press release, and then go and do series private equity funding, raising their valuation. So when they started on this case, which was probably back in around 2015, 2016, when they're just getting started as a company, that's probably one of their oldest cases that they've ever been working on. And they every time they get mentioned in a DOJ press release, they go and they get another round of private equity funding. They're now worth $8.5 billion. So there's a big profit motive, and the jobs of these people at DOJ are secured for after they leave DOJ. They're going to go work at Chainalysis. They're going to get money from Chainalysis. It is a cesspool of.
Like I said, it's kind of a scary feedback loop that's growing stronger and stronger, and then it also applies to the regulatory world as well, right? Because they're lobbying and getting things done in that sector as well.
That's correct.
Their funds, right, and they're benefiting from that, right? So they have every incentive in the world to increase certain regulations, right? Increase the banking laws as they apply to crypto, right? So that it's maybe so it applies different than to how it traditionally applied to cash. Now there's kind of a different way of looking at crypto, and they have every incentive to change those regulations so that, centralized exchanges are expected to give more oversight, all the KYC AML, right? These companies want as much KYC AML as possible because that helps their algorithm and helps their how it works. And they want to, basically they want laws to be put in place where these companies are responsible for making sure that they don't receive quote unquote tainted coins. And then what do you need to do that? Oh, you're going to need a good chain analytics software program to do that. Here we are. We'd like to help you out with that. But I assume that they're also the guys that are helping, pass this legislation, right? They're the lobbyists, I would assume.
Lobbying, yeah.
Right.
I think Jonathan Levin at Chainalysis is a very good networker. I mean, Chainalysis, I think, has been very good at that from the beginning. And I do think, like Mike was saying, this is our dogs. As Mike was saying, this is one of their first cases, so their market valuation is like nothing, sort of at the start of it. I know this isn't the only case that they built their company on, but this is a major one where they.
Jonathan Levin was also a big participant in the Mt. Gox research after the big hack in 2014. And some of the data that is turned up in the discovery in this is from that Mt. Gox, search to see who hacked Mt. Gox and tried to get the money back, which Jonathan Levin played a key role in that. And the other CEO of Chainalysis is Michael Groninger. He's a Danish citizen who created Kraken earlier on. So he created Kraken and then went on to work with Jonathan Levin at Chainalysis.
And they don't want us to. They're fighting we subpoenaed them. They're fighting the subpoena, and we subpoenaed they primarily use Chainalysis Reactor, and so we're like, okay, show us the source code, right? Like I want to look at the code. I want to have somebody like decompile the code and look at your algorithms and see what the F is going on, right? Because the cluster attributions, this cluster theory, like everyone's like talking like it's like some perfect thing, but the cluster attributions will differ across different forensic platforms. So you'll see maybe something, as an example, say, oh, this cluster is Bitcoin fog, but you'll go to another platform and it'll be, whatever, Mt. Gox or whatever, or Coinbase. There's a lot of guessing in it. And again, you have to verify it, like with something external. Like in this case.
This is one of the major problems with their analysis is that they're not scraping all the data from the blockchain and using that as an input. They're making guesses with their input data. Yeah. So by selecting what data you're inputting into the Chainalysis Reactor software, you're actually affecting what the outcome is.
Yeah, it's a lot more subjective, I think, than people realize.
And we have a Daubert hearing lined up on this as well for the summertime. It just got moved to July.
You have a what?
A Daubert hearing. It's
Daubert's just where you challenge the scientific validity of the evidence and the experts being presented in court. It's named after I forget the name of the case. Well, Daubert. No, Fry's a separate case, but Fry precedes Daubert. But it's basically where you challenge the scientific validity of the evidence, because like nobody's done it.
So is that where Chainalysis will potentially be on trial then? Like we were saying during this?
Yeah, exactly. And also it's sort of like I look at the tracing from one aspect and I'm like, okay, well, what have you traced? You've traced legal deposits from Bitcoin Fog to his Kraken account. And
it's incomplete. They have gone from out of Bitcoin Fog to his Kraken account. They don't have the input into Bitcoin Fog. They're saying that, oh, it originates from Bitcoin Fog. But no, you needed to
Sounds like
send
a
it from
word
somewhere
game.
else first. So there's a bit of a logic puzzle there as well.
Or just like a semantic tennis, you know? They're like, it originates with Bitcoin Fog. You're like, no, it went through Bitcoin Fog. It didn't originate with Bitcoin Fog. And you know, because the reason they have to say it originates with Bitcoin Fog is they have this theory that he was getting, Bitcoin Fog, when it tumbles, would charge a fee of 1% to 3%. So they're saying those deposits are the royalty payments from the licensing fees on Bitcoin Fog. But that doesn't add up at all, right? Because how our client makes his money, and it's not a lot, it's like 1-2 million, right? It's from the appreciation of his Bitcoin, and you can see it in his deposits. He works a job, odd jobs, internet, he's a computer geek, trades crypto, all that crap, right? And you can see what's that?
And he accumulates along the way. He's buying.
He accumulates, yeah.
Exactly.
He sets up wallets for people, and then all of a sudden when Bitcoin shoots up, he's got all this money, and you can see him in the beginning. He's still trading, he's adding, and then he's just living off of it. He realizes, I can leave my job. He leaves his job, right? He takes a 6-month hiatus and then decides, fuck it. You know what I mean? And you can see him living off of it, and he comes to the United States with his girlfriend to look at maybe getting a condo or something like that. And that's in 2017. Mind you, they start this investigation in 2015. That's when in 2017 they put him under all the surveillance. And you'd think they would stop after they do all this surveillance and they don't get anything, right? I cannot express how much they seized from our client at LAX and how there is nothing on it. And I was like, yeah, but the DNS registration in 2011. Yeah, but there's not a shred of evidence that he operated anything. Can you, if he did, point it out to me. Point it fucking out to me. And point out the crime, because nobody has yet. I've been on this case a year now, and nobody has pointed it out to me.
And then another big issue I think you maybe kind of glossed over is just the venue, right? The jurisdiction as to whether
the venue.
The venue is manufactured in DC.
Yeah, totally.
The government manufactured venue in DC by sending a transaction from an office in DC through Bitcoin Fog, putting a message that the money they're sending through Bitcoin Fog is to wash the proceeds of selling Molly. It's not getting a response back. They sent it to the administration contact at Bitcoin Fog, didn't get a response, and that's the basis for charging him in DC.
Oh wow!
There's nothing connecting Roman to any of this. He's never even been to DC until he got held there to appear in trial.
So because there wasn't some kind of automated message or message you shouldn't, we don't support illegal activity.
Yeah. Hey kids, say no to drugs.
That's crazy.
Well,
so that's how they're obtaining venue by the U.S. government actually using the system and saying because they're located. So wait, what is what's the legal? And explain that. I don't even get. How does that give them venue?
The United States. This is my favorite part of the United States Constitution, probably because I went on it before. But Article 3 of the United States Constitution and the 6th Amendment require that all federal criminal trials occur in the state and the district where the crime occurred. Right. And so there's a bunch of different circuits of different interpretations of what that means. But generally, the effects of the crime are not sufficient to have the crime occurred there. But, that's a little get it. But here, what's the crime? Right. They're charging him with money laundering, conspiracy to commit money laundering, operating a unlicensed money transmission business in the District of Columbia under DC municipal statute, which I think is a nice touch. And then, violation of federal money transfer licensing law.
Money transmission.
Money transmission. What the fuck does that IRS transaction that the tumbling have to do with any of that? What's scary, and this is what should scare everybody listening who is in this space, is that there's nobody on the other end of that transaction, and they're using that to just charge somebody in DC based on just basically their whim. No other evidence, right? That means if they're right on that, they can haul anybody in. Any prosecutor in the United States can haul anybody into their jurisdiction just by doing it, pressing a button, basically. Like you could end up in Nevada, you could end up in Kansas, you could end up in Chicago, you could end
The
up.
government would be able to drag defendants into favorable or unfavorable for the defendant's jurisdictions. And that is dangerous, and that is not.
It'll destroy your life, man, just paying for it. It'll destroy your life just trying to pay for it. Like people don't people are like, oh, venue's a technical clause in the Constitution. The reason they had it is like these guys were all like trial lawyers, and revolutionaries would get arrested in Philadelphia and get put on a jury trial in London. How many thousands of dollars does it take just to get there, right? Like, and then you've got this hostile jury. Our guy's lived in Sweden since he was 14. He's never set foot in DC. He's going into the United States to take some flight lessons because he realizes crypto's volatile. He's not like super rich, and he wants to get like a day job as like a pilot, right? He's at LAX. So he takes all his computers, like 3 laptops. He's got 4 Raspberry Pis, 3 terabytes of hard drives, like an insane amount of stuff, right? Like you would expect, okay, here's the operator of Bitcoin farm. We got him. And there must have just been this sinking feeling in their stomach when they got the forensics back, and they're like, oh shit, there's nothing on here. Yet they still persisted. And that's because I think the careerism, the money, this is really a 10-year investigation. It's been people's like pet project. One guy, this is the one thing I just don't know what to do. This case is so crazy, right? So there's this guy named Aaron Bice, and he graduates college and he gets a job for working as a government subcontractor who gets him a job as a subcontractor to the IRS as a criminal investigator, who starts working on this case. And he starts working with Chainalysis, right? Then he decides he's going to start his own LLC while he's still working as an IRS criminal investigator on this case under our tax dollars, right? That company, Exigent LLC, when our client gets arrested, gets top billing in the press release, right? And then Chainalysis, they're talking. Chainalysis is interesting. It isn't in the DOJ press release, but they do this Wired article interview saying, see, this proves that this stuff is right. About 5 months after that press release, 2 weeks after the press release, Chainalysis goes and raises like $100 million in the Series E financing round, right? 5 months later, they buy Exigent LLC for an undisclosed sum, but like it must have, I'm guessing it's millions of dollars because the revenue stream on government contracts from Exigent right now is about like $10 million. And
more.
You can't have this with forensics. You can't have the profit motive, because it leads to junk science and it leads to confirmation bias. It happened with bite marks. It happens with any newly.
There's a great book by Chris Fabricant. He works with the Innocence Project called Junk Science, and they talk about that throughout the whole book. When a new forensic science like fingerprint reading or checking out hair or even DNA comes on board, it gets this primacy that it doesn't deserve. If you can come in and you qualify as an expert, you have the science behind you, and you point the finger at the defendant and say the bite matches. It doesn't necessarily. It just might kind of look like it. These new emergent fields of forensic technologies have a lot of room for error that isn't fully recognized.
And like something like 52% of wrongful convictions are based on junk forensic science.
Do you love coffee and Monero as much as we do? Consider making gratuitous.org your daily cup. Pay with Monero for premium fresh beans, and if you like what you taste, send a digital cash tip directly to the Guatemalan farmers that made it possible. Proceeds help us grow this channel, Gratuitous, and Monero.
This is crazy. So would you guys say? I guess I don't want to jump to it too, but I will. We'll jump around a little bit. So would you guys say maybe this is maybe a reason why people should use something like Monero over Bitcoin so they don't get caught up in situations like this, right? Maybe falsely accused of things, because every time you transact in Bitcoin, there's a history that follows you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious.
Yeah,
like, what
if
is
you're concerned with your privacy? Yeah, I would say, first of all, don't commit crimes, but like, did you?
No, but not even concerned with your, obviously concerned with your privacy, but just concerned with getting falsely accused or getting caught up in things because you're using this ledger that permanently stores your history. and then governments can use it to construe that into what they want to construe.
And the ring signature techniques that Monero uses is really on point, I think, by sending the actual recipient and the actual sender signature along with a bunch of decoy signatures. It makes it difficult to do these kind of forensic research. And the government currently has bounties for contractors to be able to break the Monero privacy features, and they haven't been able to do it yet. I think that Monero is a great option.
Yeah. So what do you think given what you guys are learning here, what would you speculate is Chainalysis up to with regards to something like Monero? Because they can't trace it.
They're trying to. They're trying every day, I bet you.
Oh, of course they are. We know they are. But we're
a lot of money on the table.
We're assuming that that Monero will stay ahead, right? Because the guys there are just as smart as the guys there, and they kind of, due to the nature of encryption, Monero is always going to be ahead, is kind of the theory. But do you think that means they're going to want to potentially, you think, ban something like Monero because they can't deal with it, they can't trace it? Would that be what they might lean towards, like a chain analytics company? If they're incentivized, if they want to go lobby, they can't. They don't have a tool to offer for tracing Monero, but it still exists there. Do they then not want it on exchanges? Do you think they don't want it being used in the U.S.? What would you? I'm just curious. Insights there. Monero community be interested in hearing about.
I agree with that. I think it's sort of like, you go big picture on this. This is just their need to control all sorts of cryptocurrencies or anything that, threatens their control of the financial system. And mind you, I'm a capitalist and I'm saying that, right? Like, I'm not some freaking bomb throwing Marxist or whatever. I see this, and with DOJ, there seems to be, they're predisposed to see things in evil terms. So they see, the darknet and everything on it, and crypto is like everything is like nefarious, and that's one thing that I think is tainting this case, is this kind of, oh my God, it's crypto, it must be illegal. And I'm like,
when we spoke to Roman about why he first started using Bitcoin Fog to secure his privacy, it was because he was worried that people were going to figure out how much money he had in his wallets. Because if he transacts with somebody, they can see his Bitcoin wallet address. They type it into a blockchain search engine, and they're able to pop right up exactly how much is in his account. And then if they know where he is, they can go put a gun to his head, force him to transfer that to their account. And that was going on in Europe, but particularly in the Baltics and Eastern Europe, where they had all these crypto conventions, and crypto's new. This is going on around like 2011 through 2015, especially in Eastern Europe, where Roman was hanging out. And, that's what he wanted to avoid. He saw this as an innocent tool to secure his own privacy and interest. He didn't wash any money. He didn't run the thing,
except his own. He didn't wash his money. He tumbled his own money for privacy and security reasons. And now, and imagine you getting arrested. You get arrested at the airport. You're going on whatever for business or travel. You get arrested, and they're saying all of a sudden you're operating a money laundering operation for 10 years based on a DNS registration from 2011. From 10 years ago. And then I was like, how come you don't remember? You say maybe you did it, but you don't know. You're like, what the fuck? I can't even remember what I did yesterday. Right. And you got some computer guy, they're
we're not even 100% sure that he did register the BitcoinFog.com DNS.
I
don't think he did. The only attribution is that it had the same IP address that he had been using around the same time, but these guys were all using allegedly. They were all using VPNs. They could have been using the same VPN. Somebody could have been over in his area or in his apartment or connected to his Wi-Fi. There's nothing tying it to him.
Yeah, it's messed up. It's the IP address guessing alone is okay. And then in the
IP is not personally identifiable information for this exact reason. You can't use an IP to say that somebody did something. You can't use it to identify. You can't use it to identify anybody.
Right, because you don't know who's actually behind it.
Exactly.
I mean, that was with Ross, right? They needed to have him with the computer open, logged in, and catch him in the act, in the physical, for them to, basically get him on.
Apparently, their standards have gone down a lot since then.
Well, I mean, it's not gonna take a shot at that, but it's like there's no corroborating evidence here like that. It's exactly it. Like this stuff, it's a tool, but the only way you're gonna know to verify the information is from information from an external source. You need empirical verification outside the code, and in Harman and Ross's case, all these other cases, you have that. That's not here. That's I think the unique distinctive feature about this case, and where they have a huge problem, because they have an innocent man. And fundamentally, what you have here is an injustice and a conflict between profit and justice, and they can't let go because of all sorts of reputational concerns, market valuations, and stuff like that. But they're fundamentally committing an injustice, and they're putting on the mantle as some sort of moral, prosecutors who are going to save us from the scourge of, tumbling.
Now, you use the word, these things are tools, right? The Bitcoin fog, but I mean, Bitcoin fog, it was a tool that was centralized, right? Somebody was running it. It wasn't decentralized. But now we see, things like Tornado Cash. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That was recently sanctioned by the U.S. government.
Tornado Cash is a client of Chainalysis. So not only is Chainalysis going after Bitcoin fog and some of the mixers, but on the other side, they're representing other mixing services.
Yeah, it's like there's a conflict of interest. It's like another one of those neat little things.
What do you mean? Wait, what do you mean they explain that?
When we were doing research into Chainalysis, we found out that Tornado Cash is one of their clients. So
they represent business interest adverse to Bitcoin fog, right? So so this is a problem with having a for-profit forensics vendor that markets to the general market for compliance, right? It's in their other clients' interest to see something like Bitcoin, they have other Tumblr clients, right? Like it's in their interest to see Bitcoin fog maybe criminally prosecuted, because it's going to benefit the market interests of another. I'm not saying this happened, but this is the theoretical problem, right? Appearance of a conflict of interest, and you don't have that kind of business conflict of interest when this is just the government cyber lab, like FBI cyber, which is but you have.
Oh wait, Tor, you're breaking up.
We lost it, Tor.
Tor, we lost your sound.
We lost your sound.
Mike, why he tries to get that back? Hopefully he will. So I mean, Tornado Cash was, it's what was used in Ethereum. It's decentralized. It's a piece of software that was created to essentially, hide the history of Ethereum transactions. What you're saying? What was Chainalysis's connection to that? I'm still blurry on.
So. All we know is that Chainalysis has listed Tornado Cash as one of its clients in public papers that it published at some point in time in the last couple of years. I don't know what they're doing for Tornado Cash, but I'm assuming that it's some kind of lobbying. All I know is that they represent Tornado Cash, and Tornado Cash is a competitor to Bitcoin fog. So we do see the conflict of interest between that Chainalysis has positioned itself in, where it's representing the government and supposedly trying to be impartial and accurate on the one hand, but then has all these private business incentives on the other hand. And this is where profit meets justice. And I don't think the two should be as interlinked as they are.
No, but Tornado Cash was sanctioned by the U.S. government. It's basically been,
yeah. It also the sanctions coincide with Ethereum adopting stealth addresses. If you're familiar with that, it looks like Vitalik Buterin is he's attempting to address the same issue that all these mixing services and privacy coins have been trying to address as well, and that's that. People don't want other people to see how much money's in their account, where it's located.
Yeah. I refuse. Monero actually has stealth addresses. It was one of the first to implement. It's one of the technologies.
I'm a big fan of Monero. I love Monero.
So let me get your opinion there. Just back with like the concept of potentially banning a Monero. I'm just curious your legal opinions there from like a constitutional standpoint. What would your arguments be as to whether or not something like Monero, an open source piece of software that's used for communicating value, there's nobody that owns it, there's no creator to be named, it was anonymously started, and it's run by volunteers around the world that are running nodes. You don't know who they are. Do you think there is any constitutional basis to even potentially ban something like Monero? Like, what would be the arguments? Just
boy, that's like a law school exam.
Yeah.
It's like a fascinating question.
Yeah. I wish you would have had time to prepare for it, but something I'm just curious off the bat, and maybe you can think about it more. But
I think there'd be a huge constitutional fight over that, because you'll probably have one side saying this is a taking. You'll have the government saying it's well within our regulatory powers. The Federal Reserve is kind of like the fourth branch of government, as there is. It's like this quasi, and I'm not being conspiracy. It's just like it's so powerful. It would be a really interesting constitutional battle that I bet would go all the way to the Supreme Court. I mean, you've got the argument that code is speech. There's First Amendment issues here. You've got Fifth Amendment, I think, liberty, due process interest, taking interests. I would love to work on that case if it came up. I think it would be fascinating.
It would be fascinating.
Hopefully we won't be contacting you for that anytime soon. But
right. Yeah. Well, you got to start lobbying against it now before they get, into the halls of Congress to get their crazy ideas, right?
I told you before. I think before this, I ran for Congress in 2020 in New York, and that was the primary reason I did it, because I kind of saw the writing on the wall where things were heading, and I felt like nobody to date had really made these, constitutional arguments as to why something like Monero, a free speech protocol for transacting value, aligns with American values. I mean, the only arguments you've ever heard on the floor of Congress with regards to things like Bitcoin, ultimately, when really pushed up against the wall, is legislators or those that were, being asked questions by legislators would say, the experts would say, well, don't worry, Congressman or Congresswoman, actually, Bitcoin is more traceable than anything we've ever worked with in the past in terms of, trying to track and trace US dollars. So if anything, it will make, finding criminals and tracking them down easier. But you never heard then the arguments as to why, all right, well, if it wasn't easy to track and trace, would it still be something that's ethically good and, that aligns with American ideals and the Constitution? I've yet to kind of really hear anybody have the balls to go out and make that argument on a legal basis.
Anonymity is fundamental to the American existence and the American Revolution. And I mean, if you read the Federalist Papers, which are written, by John Madison and Hamilton and Jay, they're all written with anonymous Roman pseudonyms, right? Like Putin's, right? Like, and that's how the political foundation of our country emerges, is these debates, public debates between anonymous individuals. And isn't there a right to privacy with our currency too? Right. And there's a whole host of issues, and this stuff is not going away. That's the other thing. I think there's a certain desperation in their prosecutions. I think that they're panicking at the fact that ultimately you're not going to be able to control it. Like they're all gleeful and exulting over the traceability of Bitcoin. But Satoshi said knew it was traceable. And if you read Sarah Meiklejohn's paper, she points out that she got her idea for, pew chins and all this from reading the original paper on it. So this is like nothing new, but the technology is always going to be there, and it's way more efficient than anything I've ever dealt with. That's how I got into crypto. Someone was like,
same here.
Yeah, do you take Bitcoin. I was like, what is it? They're like, it's money. And we were so broke. I was like, yeah, sure. And it's been the most efficient thing. I never got into the hype. It's just like, it's fastest way to transfer stuff international.
Right. You don't have to deal with banks. You press a button and it goes.
You don't have trolls taking fees over the borders.
Right. Right.
So
Tor, what would then be the advice maybe to the Monero community that, is worried that the strong arm of the government may come down? Is there things to do in anticipation other than being out here and saying these things all the time, without having a rep in Congress yet that's really willing to go out there and make these arguments? What would you suggest? Trying to lobby
lobby, raise public awareness, and demystify the cryptocurrency. There's this mystique to it for people who don't understand it, that it's oddly superstitious and gets exploited by DOJ, which is sort of the fear of the unknown, or that the hooded hacker, I don't know what, but like demystifying it and just being like, listen, this is just a sophisticated form of currency and we're all entitled to privacy. Just because I use encryption or I want to protect my bank accounts doesn't mean I'm some sort of drug criminal or I'm a tax evader or anything. And the criminal law still requires criminal intent, right? Like, and yeah, the technology changes, but in a certain sense, the crime and the criminal intent is still the same. And like, just educate people.
Awesome. Mike, anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah, I think lobbying would do a good option as well. We were down in DC on the weekend. We talked with Senator Gillibrand's office. They expressed a lot of interest in trying to engage with the hacker community. They want to build a hacking school. They want to have more high-level computer hackers working for the federal government. They're asking us where they all are, and we're telling them they're all sitting in federal prisons. You arrested them. There's such a disconnect between the reality and what they want it to the reality to be as well. This school that they were talking about building, of course, I thought it was going to be an online school. You're trying to attract computer scientists, but no, they wanted to have a physical location for the school, presumably to, bring jobs into the community and stuff like this. But that is just such a disconnect. No one's going to want to go to a physical school to learn how to work better in hacking on the computer. Like the disconnect between the politics and the nature of the computer space is really interesting. But it's something that if we make them aware, if we make the leaders, people in positions of power aware of the opportunities that can come with this decentralization of power and decentralization in money as well, there's a lot of progress that can be made there.
Yeah, I mean, I was even talking to somebody today on Twitter, and a lot of people remain anonymous in Monero, and I completely respect that, and I think it's very important. It's one of the things that's going to, ultimately help protect Monero, right? Especially the devs, right? Most of them are anonymous, and that's very important. They can't be easily co-opted, right, or taken over by the government or the state. But like regular people like me, some of us are out there, right? I'm using Monero. I'm loud and proud about it. What would be, am I an idiot for doing that? I think, I'm a liberty-loving individual, so I don't care. But, I think in most people's gut, they're a little reluctant to even be out there and talking about it, even compared to Bitcoin, right? Because it is private by default. And they're just concerned that they, may be accused or maybe assume that they're using this tool for wrongdoing. What would be your advice? Doesn't have to be legal advice.
Well, first, I think your concern is justified in the sense that the government always loves to come for people's privacy, right? I mean, that's something that's going on with the abortion debate right now. Mm-hmm. That's going on with, all sorts of ways, and especially with the rise of social media companies. So, I mean, I wish I could say if you keep your nose clean and you don't commit any crimes, you're going to be okay. But after 10 years as a federal criminal defense lawyer, I can't say that because they do target people who make noise. and they do try to chill the speech in the community, and they do look for petty things to prosecute people criminally for that they don't like politically. And that's not something I would have said 10 years ago. I'm saying that from actually seeing that with my own eyes. And when people want to tell me what the FBI is like, excuse me, gentlemen, I always say, well, what do you know about the FBI? I've been dealing with it for 10 years. And then you say, oh, I watch them on TV. Okay, the FBI you see on TV is not like the FBI in the real fucking world. And DOJ is nothing like you think it is. And I know like a lot of
the shocking part about what it is in real life is just the banality of the evil that exists there.
I don't know if it's evil, but it's like there's an institutional nature to what's going on that allows people to have a lack of accountability. And when you combine that with a system where 90% of the cases go to plea, 8% get dismissed, and the 2% that go to trial, only 1% result in acquittal, you've got a really messed up system. And you've got people who think that the case law that they're seeing on Google Scholar and what they're seeing learning in law school matters. Well, 99%, 98% of the time, what's happening doesn't involve any case law at all, right? So what is actually going on in that system? And how much do you really know about it if you're just depending on, your text searches on Google or Google Scholar or what you saw in some casebook, right? It's a completely different machine. And what you're seeing with Roman's case is you're seeing that machine in action. And I think some ugly facets of it have come to the surface. And I think it's an extremely dangerous case for anybody in the crypto space because their theory of liability here is so broad that they can, if it's accurate, they can snatch up anybody they want on a manufactured transaction that you don't even have to be present for. That's what Roman had. There's no evidence that Roman even had anything to do with that, quote unquote sting they did in DC. Nothing. And look what happened there, like from a criminal law theory point, there's no mens rea, right? It's like you have to have criminal intent, right? Where's the mental intent of the criminal defendant in that quote unquote entrapment action? At first I was going to mount an entrapment defense and then I realized, oh my God, there's no defendant here. But then that looks like a strict liability crime because they've eliminated the mental intent of the defendant. And that's scary as fuck, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes against centuries of our common law tradition, right? And like you remove intent from criminal law, the government's just going to be able to just, grab anybody they want,
Yeah, that's what was crazy with Tornado Cash because they sanctioned use of the tool. So anybody that was using it for any reason, it didn't matter what the mens rea was. It was it became strict liability because of sanctions.
That disconnect is a threat to everybody's liberty.
Yeah, I think, and that's actually like this case is so fascinating, and these cases are so fascinating because the stuff that's going on, the law is changing, and they're moving there, I think, really to this sort of like strict liability theory of criminal law it's like lurking in there. And that, I feel like a nerd kind of for saying that because most people are like, what are you talking about? But like, that's scary as fuck for all of us, right? If that's accurate, right? An accurate depiction of what's going on, everyone should be concerned there.
What's your constitutional argument for DC not to be able to have proper venue for any criminal case? I like that one.
This upset the DOJ. It was like an argument that nobody can answer that we've done no research on. I know the Constitution, but I keep on asking the question, well, if the United States Constitution requires all federal criminal trials to be in the state and the district where the crime occurred, and the District of Columbia is not a state, how is any federal criminal jury trial constitutional in DC? Now, I expected the first time I asked that question, people to be like, oh yeah, well, Tor, you know about this case. You know what I get every freaking time? Well, I don't know, and everyone's running off and nobody can tell me why. And then so we put it in our motion to dismiss, which the court still hasn't decided. But I put it in as like a paragraph. I was like, okay, let's see what they got. It's like 10-page response, like nothing on, like totally on point, and I can see their panic and their fear of thinking like, oh my God, there goes all our January 6 prosecutions or anything, or like, are they going to get the votes on the Supreme Court? We were totally surprised by that reaction and are thankful for them for doing all that research for us. And we will continue to make that argument up the ladder as well. because if you're going to put an innocent man in jail for 50 years to life, we're going to try to destroy criminal jurisdiction for all federal trials in DC, and we're going to make you justify the constitutional basis for it. Because the Constitution is not an a la carte document. You just don't get to pick which parts of it you want to enforce, and which is cool, which is, I think, what is kind of happening here, because they've gotten soft with the plea process. Because all they do is pleas. And now they've got somebody calling bullshit on them, and they're all scrambling and huffing and puffing. They still can't point to a single crime or a single piece of evidence that our client ever operated Bitcoin fraud. And I invite anybody listening or watching this to point me to any evidence that our client operated Bitcoin fraud. I dare you to find it.
If things go your way, what do you potentially see as the precedent that could be set here with regards to chain analysis and how it's used in a court of law?
Fantastic question.
That's a great question. Like, I think, first of all, that what I hope is that there'll be a precedent that if you're going to use proprietary computer software as a form of forensics to accuse a criminal defendant, you have to produce it to the defense for analysis, and you don't get to hide it. And in this case, we subpoenaed it, and they're trying to hide it, right? If you're going to make money off of a criminal investigation, you need to disclose that money, those amounts, and the people involved in it need to be, we have a right to call them to the stand. They're refusing to put the key players and Chainalysis on the stand. We subpoenaed them, and they're fighting the subpoena, right? You want to make all that money. Like, nobody forced Chainalysis to go into the law enforcement market. That was a voluntary choice. And when they went in that market, they should have expected that defense lawyers would subpoena them and say, we want to see your software. They weren't forced into this. And now they're all like, oh, no, it's proprietary. It's proprietary. Well, I mean, to me, like, again, it looks like you're hiding something. How can I trust you? Because it looks like you made a lot of money off of this case. And when this case started, your company had a market valuation of 0. And right now it has $8.6 billion, and you built it on all these relationships with DOJ. You're hiring prosecutors off of our case. You're buying private companies started by investigators at the IRS on our case during the pendency of this case that were promoted by the press release in this case. You're spending millions of dollars on them, right?
And then they're going and writing a book about the development. There's a book by Andy Greenberg called Tracers in the Dark, The Global Hunt for the Crime Lords of Cryptocurrency. And it follows the development and growth of Chainalysis, as well as the 2 key agents, the arresting officers who arrested Roman Sterlingov at LAX. And the book has already been optioned for a Hollywood docudrama.
That's conversations about the arrest of our client that we haven't seen and that I didn't know about. We didn't really know about until
it was not included in discovery, was never turned over to us.
The agent names, like every freaking prosecutor in the case is in the index, right? And it's, it's careerism. Like, one problem with DOJ, and it's not just on this case, is that, like, they keep statistics on convictions like batting averages, right? Except the problem is criminal justice is not a sport, okay? Like, justice has to do with whether or not someone
is the saddest thing.
Are guilty, and if they are guilty, what an appropriate punishment is that our society can agree on, right? It's not racking up as many convictions as you can. But that's the mentality. And in this case, I've even seen a communication where they're like, are we getting credit for it? Are we going to get credit for it? Whoa, man, hey, your job as a prosecutor is not to rack up convictions.
Right.
It's justice.
Right. It's lives that's at stake, and it's liberty, the future of liberty, right? Because every time they ratchet it up and create this precedent, it takes away people's liberty, right? Yeah,
and that's why we've got the Bill of Rights, right? And the Bill of Rights is the philosophy of the Bill of Rights is not trust the government. Just read it, and everybody, if you question me on that point, I don't think anybody will. Just read them, and they're all affirmative rights against government encroachment. Because they knew what this was like. This is nothing new, right? What is new is the technology, and they're using it because nobody knows it, and everyone's afraid to admit that they don't understand it, right? I don't think anybody really totally understands this crap, right? And so people they don't want to be insecure, so they join the bandwagon. It's like the emperor's new clothes. And of course, this Chainalysis stuff is great. Well, they arrested that person over there and that person over there, and they caught that child predator over there. But like,
they're also trying to use this case to prove their appeal chain methodologies. In August, well after Roman was arrested, there was a presentation at the Usenik Security Symposium in Boston by some academic researchers from Europe, including Sarah Mikojan, as well as some of her students who also are contractors for Chainalysis, in which they published a paper with details in the arrest, again, that we didn't even know about. And then they presented them to a big symposium in Boston publicly.
There's like some ethical issues there, right? Like there's a pending federal criminal trial. One of the investigators in that pending federal, this is the law school exam version, one of those investigators in that federal criminal trial publicly publishes a white paper using evidence from the case and naming the defendant in that case. And,
evidence that's subject to a protective order.
Yeah, at least on our end. And what are they doing? What they're trying to do is they panicked when we came in and said, we think this is junk science, you need to show it to us, right? And you don't have any peer-reviewed white papers or anything that establishes the accuracy of this. And we said, if you do, give them to us. Like we started banging the table real early, right? Like, show us the scientific evidence. They don't have it. That white paper is an attempt to validate their process, but it's kind of a lot. I think it's a little bit of a mess, but we'll get into that in court. But
that will be examined in court, right? In this pretrial you're talking about, right?
I hope so. Yeah, the Daubert, the methodologies and what are getting challenged here, and sort of the the buzzword in this space is heuristics, which is just an old Greek word for fucking guessing.
Probably.
Right? Educated guess, right? But for your logic geeks, this is an probabilistic inductive methodology. It's not a deductive system. And that's how you catch innocent people in it.
Right.
Because you ignore the things that contradict your guess, classic confirmation bias. Because you're talking to a reporter, you got Hollywood in your eyes, you're thinking about that $1 million job at Chainalysis that you may even just get hired right off of this case for, right? Or I got to sell my company, right? So, and you're gonna have a multi-million-dollar revenue stream, and I'm not just going to be stuck as some sort of IRS criminal investigator for the rest of my life. As a matter of fact, I didn't spend that much time at all at the IRS as a CIA because I started my company as soon as I got in. I built it on this case, and I sold it 5 months after the press release, after we arrested that criminal, right? Which was proof of my concept for my company that I sold for millions of dollars that then went to go fundraise $100 million 2 weeks after that press release as well. But it's all cool, man. None of that affects the forensics at all.
Scary stuff. Man.
Scary.
Guys, this is great. You think I might see you down at Monerotopia? I know you mentioned you might be interested in.
We'd love to come.
I'd love to have you guys down there. That'd be fantastic.
That'd be fun.
Is there any info? We'll conclude this part of the show. Is there any information you guys want to throw out there? Links, info you want to get out?
Yeah, I put a link in the chat here. Can you post it? Is that how it works?
In the Twitter chat?
No, I put it here in the private chat on SteamYard.
Twitter chat. That's just.
Oh, we could do it in the Twitter chat once we move over there. You could post the link over there. But go ahead. What is that?
Oh yeah, no, it's a link to our matter highlight on our firm website for USV Sterlingov, and there's an option there to donate to Roman's defense because it looks like
all his money.
They seized all his money, and we're doing our best with limited resources on this one.
We're like, no, man, this is like the old days on this one.
We will we'll put that link in the show notes.
Awesome.
And when we move over to the Twitter space, you can try to put it in the comments, and I could put it in the nest so people can see it.
Cool. Great. We can also I'll send you a link right now to there's a Wired article featuring Roman's case.
Mm-hmm.
And it's written by Andy Greenberg, actually the same guy who wrote the book about Chainalysis. So here we go. Bitcoin fog case could put cryptocurrency and trading on trial.
It's a good book, actually. Very good book.
It is a really good book.
And everybody
Right
in
there.
the Monero community read it because it tells the story of how they developed the alleged traceability of blockchain through all these different forensic methods and the heuristics that they use. You know.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check out that book, and then I'm gonna try to get him on the show. I'd love to go further down this rabbit hole.
I put a link to the Amazon link for the book here for you as well. So there's 3 links that I put down.
We'll put that in, all that in the show notes. Tor, how about you? Any last words, things you want to get out there?
I just want to thank everybody for listening and watching, and just urge again to educate those around you. It doesn't have to be like any kind of big event or anything. Just when you talk about this kind of stuff in crypto, just to normalize it, I feel like, and that's going to take a little bit of time, but just educate people and demystify it, because I feel like the biggest thing that we're up against is sort of like the insecurity and ignorance and the fear on the sort of exotic technology. So we need all the help we can get. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, of course. You came to the right place. Our interests align for sure. Freedom fighters.
Freedom fighters.
So if you guys have a moment, would love to we could jump into the Twitter chat. There are a few people there. We'll see if anybody's got a question. If not, we'll wrap it up. But I will see you guys over there. Just go over to the Twitter. You should already be in the.
And then, do we just leave the studio here?
Yeah. Just we'll shut this off and just go into the spaces. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode. We release new episodes every week. You can find and subscribe to our show on YouTube, Odyssey, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Go to monerotalk.live to subscribe for a full list of places where you can watch and listen. If you want to interact with us, guests, or other podcast listeners, you can follow us on Twitter. And please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps people find the show, and we are always happy to read them. So thanks so much, and we look forward to being back next week.